Hello, everybody. And Jason, super pumped to chat again. We've been having some great conversations. And today we are going to be talking about something that's really almost like it feels like it's becoming a lost art a little bit. Um, and it aligns with what we've been talking about recently. But how do people host? What makes up a great networking event? Like, what does that mean? Um, and I think this is really timely. We're about to hit RSA, well, FSI stack in a couple weeks, and then RSA here shortly. Um, but let's jump into it. You've been in the space. You've been to, I would say, your fair share of dinners, being in sales for so long, right? What makes a great in-person event in your mind?
I think there's a few keys to it, and I'll take a moment to run a little bit of one of the things I talk about, and it's one is having the right people there, right? Getting the right invites, knowing who to get there, understanding like what they want to talk about. You have the location matters a lot, especially with the commuter traffic and just people how they get back and forth to work. So finding the right place, then having the right type of conversation. So having appropriate topics, having something that's of value, I think is probably the bigger key. I mean, it used to be great to go and get free drinks and food, but everybody does that. It's more how do we learn, right?
Yeah, there's this saying I used to hear, and I think it's true today, is that security leaders, if they wanted to, they could eat free every meal for their whole life as long as they're enrolled. Somebody's going to buy them food, right? Like,
right. That's right.
But so you touched on a couple things though, real rapidly there. It's the location, so knowing where to be. The past few years, particularly since COVID, everyone kind of like jettisoned. They moved to wherever they wanted to move, right?
Exactly. That saying though is like I do also find that people are more interested in getting together, not maybe every day, but like at events, right?
Yeah.
I think there's this yearning for us to reconnect as humans. I think it's I personally believe, and I've talked about this a lot whenever we're talking in just ourselves, of there is going to be a renaissance of human connection, be driven by artificial intelligence and just that need to have that human connection, because we look at online and there's so much generated content to where we kind of feel alienated, I think, where we had that human connection through social media in certain ways, but now it's so easy, it's somewhat overwhelmed and it doesn't seem as authentic. But
I think it cheapens it, right? I think that's where it feels like it cheapens it. And actually, the research and data backs it up. It's 59% of people, they actually go to dinners and mini regional conferences. 59% go there for networking, not because they want to hear a keynote or they want to learn something new. They're going to learn that some other way. But it's the building the relationships, being able to talk with peers and catch up, and then talk about what's going on in the industry and Claudebot and like all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, the lobster for sure, man. And I think we are definitely there, right? Like you and I, we talk about this, and very rarely do you go to a conference to be educated. At least I don't, right? I'm always usually the one at the conference presenting, and I've gone to some that are relevant to my role, but it's really truly that is like, you want to talk to the people that are doing it. You want to engage with them and exchange ideas. And I think that regionally it makes so much more connection, because now you have a little bit in common because of location, but then it also comes down to, topics of interest. Because I've been to great conversations and dinners where the networking works, but the presentation is somewhat bombed. And we can talk a little bit about that.
So I think the presentation component, but also the relevancy, right? Like being able to pull people together that are in relative or similar industries or geographic areas, whatever that is. Like those can be really impactful, and people have been spending a lot more time in investing in those regional things. One, they don't got to travel as long or as far away, right? Two, their corporate. It's funny, when after COVID happened, a lot of people were like, everyone's going back in person right away. And then you had all the CFOs being like, we didn't need people to travel for like 3 years. Do we got to start traveling again? Like, do we have to? Right?
Yeah.
It's a fair question, right? So, okay, so the location, but another point, and you and I talked about this. It's not just the geolocation of like, it actually means it actually matters where. So, for example, if people look me up on LinkedIn, it'll say I'm in Washington D.C. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
Right.
much every security leader who lives in Northern Virginia probably has Washington D.C. as just kind of the nearest hub. But if you book something in Washington D.C., they're not driving from Reston or Ashburn or Leesburg to go to D.C. Right? It's just
Right.
like that's too far.
Yeah.
Do it in Tyson's, right? Like,
yes, exactly. And I think that's a lot to do it. We like our home time, we like the family time, but as leaders and as executives, we know that we got to do that weekly dinner, right?
yep.
And it's a lot about timing. And if you can get me closer to home to when the meetings and the conversations are over and it's a quick ride, and just the same way of getting there. We had the same type of experiences in the Bay Area when I lived out there. You had San Francisco, Peninsula, you had Southern Peninsula, and then you also had the East Bay. And really, it all depended on who you were trying to target for that actual conversation.
Exactly. Chicago is another great example. If you're on the west side of Chicago, people from the east side are not traveling over to go do that. Like that's just too much traffic, right? Okay, so the location matters. How important is the venue? Like, how fancy does it need to be? Can it be?
Well, I think you need to be appropriate for who's going to be attending. Does it have to be the super fancy places? It doesn't hurt. Can it be a dive bar? Yeah, I've had some of the best conversations ever. But I think it also is like, how are you trying to draw them? What is in it for them? I mean, yes, we want the networking, we want the education, but I don't want to go eat at a fast food restaurant or some dive bar if I'm skipping a meal at home with my family. So it does need to be appropriately placed as far as some high quality food, and preferably with some type of private arena to where you don't have to worry about the outside noise or outside interruptions.
Yeah, where you can actually hear each other, actually have a conversation, right? So places that have a private dining room. There's this one of my favorite dinners. It was actually one of the worst dinners, meaning worst food, but it's so memorable because all of us were there. And I remember it was at this like dive bar, and like the best thing was a fried bologna sandwich that you could get, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And like there was no top shelf anything, right? But we had the whole back area pool, and it became almost this camaraderie thing of everyone like fried bologna for everybody, right? Like
Exactly.
15, 20 years later, we're still talking about it, right? But yeah, having the venue matters, I think. How should vendors or organizers pick the attendees? How do you think about that?
So that's the trickiest part, right? And we've been really focused in on this internally at our organization here at Delve Risk. But really, it's I think you got to select a topic and then figure out like who is the right people to hear that message. We all like to talk to executives, and that's generally who I speak to and try to target, right? So I generally have a high level conversation around that, but it's the targeting gets a little tricky because you got to pick the right night, and then you got to have a network to get those people there, or understand who's in the area and reach out to them with good topics and maybe even referrals. So that's one where you need to rely on your local sales teams and your marketing teams to help assist with that.
Yeah, I think what I would like probably add to that is that I've heard I call them steak tourists, right?
Mm-hmm.
People call them plate liquor. There's all these different names for those folks who show up to every dinner. They've never bought anything, and you're like, maybe one day, right? But and some of these event organizers, they have just a regular host of people who never buy. They're not actually interested. But I think finding if you're going to outsource and have a partner do that, make sure it's a reputable, a verified partner that has a good network. But I think one of the secret weapons that and I was just on a call with a prospect literally before this is, if you can plants a ringer or two, right?
Yes.
Somebody who's a customer, somebody who's happy, that's going to be not just you out there or not just your company, but like a peer who's adding into that. Have you found or seen that to be really meaningful?
Actually, that's a great point. Whenever we would host a dinner, we'd always want to have one or two friendlies, right? That could help us lead conversations that would contribute to the broader conversation of the entire group. Sometimes we would bring them in that were not company sponsors or spokespersons, but people that are knowledgeable of the topic.
Yeah.
Then you might have a solution that fits around that. And that's the way I think the soft introduction, soft selling is great. But for sure, and even, you can go beyond that to where if you do have that type of presentation of give some topics to them to help lead the conversations, because it does two things. One is it drives conversation, introduction, brings people into the conversation, and two, it drives value.
Yeah.
People want to go there. Yeah, they want to network, but second after that, they want to learn a little something. And we talk to people that are interesting.
I think it's an often missed point, right? Of saying, hey, like, of course, location, the venue, the city, how you get the people there, who's there. But a lot of times I think solution providers, marketing teams, even, they are only trying to, steer the conversation to where they're the only answer. And I think that's actually a misnomer. What they should be doing is elicit and drive good conversation about your space and stand tall or stand apart, because your solution is not going to be the perfect fit for everybody. But if you can talk about like, hey, this is why we believe this, and it works for some people and it doesn't for other people, you get that credibility of respect from those folks. And it doesn't feel like you're like hamming them, right? Like,
pushing it down, right? Like it's that's the other piece too, is like if you burn it out where it's a complete sales pitch, and there are times and places for it, but you generally won't get those people to come back.
Yeah.
And I think you're spot on with your comments there, as far as looking at having those and hosting those dinners.
So two other pieces here, right? One, we've been doing a ton in talking about readiness and preparedness, right? How, like, it takes a lot of work. Like for a seller, they're going to this dinner event. They're going to meet 15 people, and typically that's a lot of homework, right? Like, what's the besides being a Delve Risk customer and having it automatically created for you, right? Like, how should a seller or a field marketing team help prepare those attendees that are coming from their side?
Man, if they can do some research, right? We all want to hit up LinkedIn, which is great, or just if you have a conversation, anything you can bring in ahead of time and give it to your executives. I had a rep, her name was Laura Withers, and we didn't use Delve Risk in the same ways back whenever we were working together, but she had her own personal database. And whenever I would show up to an event or go on meetings, she had her own had a headshot. She pull it out from LinkedIn. She write a summary, kind of give a one pager that you can consume in less than a minute.
Yeah.
And it was like by far the most wonderful thing I think any of my reps created. And it's just that little bit of like, hey, they like baseball and I went to a game with them, or they have a family and they're really fond of playing golf. I mean, it's these simple little pieces she would throw in there that whenever you started talking to these executives, you could connect with them on a personal level beyond just the business selling.
You find that commonality, right? Like, I was just at CruiseCon, and I kept talking with some of the attendees there, because this lady's son goes to Purdue, right?
All right.
I got my MBA from IU, right? And so it just became like this theme over the 5 days of, hey, how's it going? You guys recover yet? No, maybe next year you guys will be able to play, right? Like it. So like these little things that if you arm the seller or your executive with, they can walk up and be like, instead of being like, oh, so tell me what's it like being a CISO at a bank, you'd be like, hey, I was a military vet too. Really? Where'd you serve? What'd you do? Those bonds of fraternity are so important here. And they really do turn into opportunities, right? One other piece though, and I've been geeking out a bunch about this, is the fact that the follow-up motion afterwards, I feel like it's often missed.
Oh,
right?
agreed.
Like, what would a great follow-up motion be in your mind? And then I'll kind of share like at least how I kind of think about it.
Yeah, so we try to hit it with multiple fronts, right? Where we would send something from the marketing team, right, which was generally fairly general in the conversation. If we had an executive attend, we would love for them to write a note, but a lot of times they're too busy. And then for sure, your sellers should be following up and just thanking people for the conversation. And at that point, you schedule the meeting. That needs to happen within 24, no longer than 48 hours after the event, because they're on to the next thing and they might forget about it. And if you don't strike while the iron's hot, specifically the next morning, I think is the best. Then you miss an opportunity. That's the first piece. The second piece is you were talking about fraternity. And if you have a conversation about something other than business, and you talk about how you've built a a small relationship with this individual, you talk about that and then request a meeting, I think your odds of securing that conversation go way up. As opposed to, you're a CISO at a Fortune 500 bank. I would like to talk to you. Thanks for attending my dinner. Oh, what happened?
Oh no, we'll remember it in a second. Okay, so pivoting real quick. Okay, so one of the in kind of in relation to this is that, yes, having the fraternity, being able to draw that connection, but there is this piece of that you mentioned, the timing, right? The next day, the following day, and I think that's where people can get a bit more creative. Of like, hey, if I just saw you, that might be an opportunity. I was talking to a seller lady, and every time she does a dinner, the next day she sends a video, one of the LinkedIn video pieces, right? She's like, because they're going to click, they're more likely to click on it. They just saw me last night, and it's a personalized. And I was like, well, how long does it take? She goes, it's actually faster than doing the email, because if you do the email, you end up trying to like make it perfect, and then, but it's like, hey, Jason, really good to see you last night. Awesome. Really enjoyed the conversation. Add a couple notes here. Would love to pick your brain on some stuff, or, share some stuff. Let me know if you're interested. But you can get a little more creative once you've had those initial touch points. I wouldn't say show up at their house with flowers, but
I live in Kansas City now, so I always used to, when we'd have events here local and people would come in from out of town, I'd always send them some barbecue sauce, right? Or send a note saying thanks.
Yeah.
That was kind of a nice way to stand out and above, but I love the video side of it. And we do got to get more creative.
We have to. It's so noisy that we absolutely have to stand out. So we've been talking for we're almost at the 20 minutes. So any rapid fire quick takeaways, because we talked on location, quality, the attendees, the venue, the date, right? Prep.
Yeah. I'd say the number one key takeaway is be yourself, right? Like, leave the selling for the daytime. Build connections at these events. Yes, you got a job to do, and yes, you want to push the agenda, but make a connection, have a good conversation, and then they're going to be more likely to engage with you in the long run. I think genuineness is the key to success in these networking events.
Yeah, I don't think that can be emphasized enough, right? Like, I'd almost go so far as to say, and I'm sure there'll be people who disagree with me, but like, authenticity can often beat like the value of your product, even maybe, right? Like at
Yeah.
least to get the next conversation. Like you can have the best things in sliced bread, but if you don't come across authentic, they don't ever want to hear it.
No,
Right.
no. I think we all are that way, right? We can tell when someone's being authentic or not, and we all have that same kind of feeling.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. And everybody, thank you for watching. Follow us, track us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. And check us out at delvis.com.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hopefully that was